Well, at least the pregame show was cool. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where once again the Kraken are close, but not close enough against a team that has played pretty well this season and was coming in on a hot streak. But for the Kraken, it's just another loss at the end of the day. The Kraken do end up falling 3-1 to the LA Kings, though the last one's an empty netter, so it's basically another 2-1 game where it's a low-scoring physical affair, much like the last one in St. Louis. Though this time, the Kraken are back on home ice for the first of 6 games in this upcoming homestand, and that ends up making a big difference in one key way, which also ends up being one of the bigger stories coming out of the game, especially for anyone that was at it. And that's the fact that pregame, the Kraken definitely put on a bit of a show in this one. It's the type of pregame show that I think they were probably trying to have ready for that first home game way back in October, but with COVID and the arena not opening until just shortly before that first home game, they just weren't quite able to have everything ready to go then. They do have it ready now, and certainly better late than never. And at least I think it was worth the wait, as it was a pretty cool pregame show with a mixture of video, on-ice projections, some audio that they even had some local radio and news stations do specifically for this, as well as some projections onto a curtain that they had pulled over that window at the north end of the arena, and some props that they lowered down onto the ice with LED displays that all added up for, again, a pretty awesome show early on before the game. All of which obviously would have been even cooler to see in person if you weren't able to be at the game, but if you do still want to see it and haven't yet, there is a video of it up on the team's YouTube channel that I can link down below. As for the game itself, again, obviously that does not end up going the way we would have hoped it would. Drieger does end up getting the start in net, his second consecutive start for the Kraken, showing signs that they are willing to potentially give him a little bit more time in net, with him having performed, at least recently, a little bit better than Grubauer. Outside of that, Geeky still day-to-day not playing in this one, and in his spot, instead of McCormick, who had been playing for him in the last couple of games, it's Alexander True taking that spot on the forward end. Axtell also playing around with lines a little bit, trying to get something going to end this losing streak, moving Donskoy up to Gord's line, trying to get him going and get that first goal, especially coming off of him having a pretty good game against the Blues. Though, obviously, it doesn't end up working out as far as getting that first goal is concerned, or winning. As we do now get into the game, it starts off with some good early pressure by the Kraken, though the Kings are able to respond with some pressure of their own going the other way. And the big difference here is that for the Kings, they're actually able to turn their pressure into shots on goal. A couple good saves for Drieger early on, but eventually it's just too much, as another shot on goal is saved by Drieger with a shoulder save, though the rebound goes out in front, where Kempe is able to deflect it off of his skate onto his stick and into the net to give the Kings the early 1-0 lead, just over 4 minutes into the game. Another early first period goal. From there, the rest of the first period continues to be a very physical, high-hitting game, with the Kraken specifically laying some big hits, headlined by Alexiak, Donato, and True, who are really making their presence known early on. Although, well, all this physical play is leading to more possession time and even more time in the offensive zone for the Kraken as the period goes on, the Kings are doing a very good job of making it difficult, for one, for the Kraken to even get into the offensive zone, really locking down the neutral zone. But even when the Kraken are able to get into the offensive zone, they just are not able to get set up and get shots off on goal, as the Kings are keeping the puck along the boards and in pretty much constant puck battles, as the rest of the first period is relatively uneventful, until the very end, where the Kings do end up getting a power play in the final minute of it. The Kraken are able to kill off that power play successfully, including the minute of it that bleeds over into the start of the second period, though unlike what Seattle was able to do in St. Louis with the power play of theirs that bled over into the start of the third, the Kings are able to use that minute of power play in the start of the second to gain momentum and really put on some early pressure on the Kraken net, once again at the start of a period, and once again, in spite of some hard work by Drieger to prevent it from happening, The Kings, just over 4 minutes into the second, are back on the board to make it 2-0. And also, for the second time in the game, it's a shot off of a rebound that just barely squeaks past the post to get into the net. The Kings, especially on this one, are very fortunate that this doesn't hit the post and bounce out, as the puck is on edge, spinning as it goes into the net, and just a half inch or half rotation of the puck the other way, this one probably does hit the post and stays out going into the back of Drieger. The post, though, not doing Drieger any favors here, which, as we'll see later on, ends up not being the case at the other end of the ice. Shortly after, the Kings take the 2-0 lead. Eberle is able to spring Johansson on a breakaway, though his shot is saved, as well as the follow-up shot by Alexiak. Eberle in particular had a very good game in this one, creating, well, the vast majority of the chances for the Kraken. Then a little bit later, Gord gets hit in the face by a high stick, which sends Seattle to the power play. Gord is also left bloodied by this one, so it ends up being a 2-minute minor for Seattle, which I think is the first one for them in franchise history. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't remember another 4-minute penalty that the Kraken have had go their way. So with 4 minutes of power play, the Kraken do kind of squander the first 2 minutes of it, having a little bit of control early on, but the Kings are even 4-on-5, doing a good job of locking down the neutral zone and making it difficult for Seattle to get into the offensive end with control. Eventually, though, really needing to take advantage of this opportunity, in the second 2 minutes of the power play, a shot by Gio up by the blue line is deflected in front of the net on a good hand-eye play by Järnkrok. It's in and out of the glove of Peterson, and Johansson is there to chip it in over the pad and into the net for the power play goal and to bring the Kraken to within one. It's now 2-1, still Kings with the advantage. Right off the ensuing faceoff, the puck is over the glass, and it's Seattle right back to the power play as it's delay of game on the Kings, and for the Kraken, a chance to get this game tied up, which they are almost able to take advantage of, as it does take them a little while to get set up in the offensive zone. Again, the Kings doing a good job of making it difficult for the Kraken to get into the offensive zone in the first place. But once they're there, it's Gio across to McCann for the one-timer, which is off the post and out. Right back to Gio, back to McCann, another one-timer, saved. And eventually, this power play is killed off by the Kings, but not for lack of trying to score on the Kraken's end, as McCann gets a couple of very good shots off, and LA is saved by the pipes behind Peterson. And not for the last time. Coming off of the basically 6 straight minutes of power play, the Kraken are able to capture some momentum, though they're still having trouble getting through the neutral zone cleanly, and on top of that, have also started to develop a problem of connecting on passes, as way too many of their passes are finding LA sticks instead of other Kraken sticks, which certainly doesn't help the whole getting set up in the offensive zone thing. Eventually, the Kraken are able to turn this momentum into a 2-on-1 chance on the LA net, though the save is made on the Eberle shot, though it's also worth mentioning that this 2-on-1 chance was in large part created by Eberle, and a big hit that he laid right in front of the LA bench along the boards that kind of distracted the Kings for a little bit as they're looking for a call and upset by the fact there isn't a call. Either way, it allows Seattle to get past them through the neutral zone on that odd man breakaway. Ultimately, it doesn't turn into a goal, however. It wouldn't be their last chance, though, as the Kraken then get a 3-on-2 chance, which leads to a Donato shot, and the horn goes off and it's in! Or, wait, is it in? It ends up being called no goal on the ice, and as it goes to replay and review, it turns out that, in fact, the puck does go off of either the post or the crossbar, then off of the skate of Peterson, and stays out of the LA net somehow, some way. So, once again, even though the posts are doing Drieger no favors, the posts behind Peterson are definitely helping him out in this one, as they've already saved 2 goals to this point. And eventually, we do get to the end of a relatively eventful second period, especially considering the rest of the game, with the score still 2-1 Kings. And as we get into the third, well, the third pretty much ends up being a replay of the first period, just without the early LA goal. I mean, that's fortunate, but still, the Kings are making it basically impossible for the Kraken to get into the offensive zone cleanly, and keeping the puck along the boards whenever it does get to their end of the ice, really just continuing to do a very effective job of locking down the neutral zone. As the period goes on, the Kraken are able to get a couple of chances here and there. McCann puts another one off of a post next to Peterson, and then has a rush chance a little bit later that he puts wide. Eventually, towards the end of the period, Eberle creates a very good look for the Kraken, though that one also ends up being saved by Peterson, and we get to the final minutes of the game with the Kraken still down 2-1. And finally, with about 4 minutes left in the game, Larson, who had just put a shot off of Iafallo in that whole play that Eberle set up, which did lead to a kind of mini power play for the Kraken as Iafallo came up hobbled and really wasn't able to do a whole heck of a lot. Again, that was the one where another shot ends up being saved, but back into the offensive zone, Larson gets another shot off on goal. This one also saved, but Appleton in front of the net is hit up high, and Seattle is going to get another late power play. This Kraken power play, though, even in spite of the fact that the guy serving the penalty for the Kings is one of their better penalty killers in Drew Doughty, really is never able to get much of anything going whatsoever. Eventually, with about 30 seconds left in it, they do end up pulling Drieger and getting a little bit of 6-on-4 time, though still it's just really not enough time in the offensive zone. And eventually that 6-on-4 leads to 6-on-5. They do create some chaos in front of the net in the final seconds, but the Kings eventually put it into the empty net and end up pulling this one out 3-1. So in the end, this game ends up feeling a lot like that last one against the Blues, for the Kraken just having way too much trouble getting through the neutral zone and cleanly into the offensive end. The Kings playing very solidly defensively, and Seattle only able to get on the board with the one goal, again, just like that game in St. Louis. This time, there is an element of luck that plays into it, again with the Kings just squeaking a couple past the post while Seattle hits the post 3 times. All 3 times the puck stays out of the LA net, but that's just, again, kind of how hockey goes. And ultimately, Seattle only ends up getting 18 shots on goal. The Kings only end up getting 22, but it's enough for them to end up winning the game. For Drieger's part, again, for the second game in a row, I think he had a pretty solid game. Seattle did play pretty well defensively in front of him, but he only ends up letting in 2 of the 21 shots he faces, and both of those, again, do just squeak in off of rebounds, so it wasn't like they were particularly soft goals that he lets in. On the offensive end for the Kraken, again, there really wasn't a whole lot of offense, but what little offense there was for Seattle in this game was pretty much all created by either Eberle or McCann. McCann usually with the shots and Eberle usually with the setup. But still, it's pretty much just those two guys that end up standing out at that end of the ice, as Seattle's going to have to figure out how to play against teams that are playing them a little bit more aggressively and with a stronger forecheck and neutral zone presence, like they've seen in these last few games. And finally, just like we talked about in the game against the Blues, even though, once again, the Kraken are able to stay right with a good team and not be embarrassed by any means in this game, staying right in it all the way to the end, it still is, even if it's a close loss that was fun to watch, another now 9th loss in a row. So the Kraken, who still have more than half of their season left, are definitely going to have to figure out how to change a couple of things around to get back into that win column, certainly in a much more consistent basis, if they want to have any chance of making this season interesting as we get towards the end of it. And as far as that's concerned, I would, and at this point, maybe even the Kraken would like to see what you guys think they could potentially do to make that happen down in the comments section below. Otherwise, if you've made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that stuff down below that help out the channel. And until next time, stay safe out there, be good to each other, and go Kraken.